Thanks for joining us on Front Page, the Pakatan Harapan report card on Lite. I have with me a panel of esteemed journalists here to assess different elements of the Pakatan Harapan government's 1 year in power. Now, I want to talk a little bit about mega projects because a lot has been said about getting the country's finances in order, and one way to do that was to look at these big mega infrastructure projects. Where do we want to begin? I mean, there's so many things that we can talk about, right? The MRT, the ECRL, the third car. Yeah. Shall we begin there? The most controversial, this third national car. Let's begin with Terence.
Okay, I'm all for the national car project because I think it will be good to stimulate the economy, as what we spoke about in the second segment.
Right.
Help to create jobs. And don't forget, according to the Malaysian Automotive Institute, 750,000 jobs were created in 2017-2018 in the automotive industry. And definitely, I think where Tun Mahathir is coming from, he goes back to 30 years ago when he started the first national car project and then the second national car project, which in totality have been able to provide in excess of 2.5 million jobs. So definitely he's going back to a formula that works. And as we discussed in the second segment, we should look at ways to open up manufacturing and economic opportunities and job opportunities, and this is one surefire way. It's time and tested. We've done it before, we've done it well, we've done it right, we can do it again. So it's not a case of reinventing the wheel,
right.
And it's something that can be done, and I think should be done. And I think now with the tie-up with China, with Geely, I think we will be able to excel in it.
Okay.
And for your information, I'm picking up my X70 tomorrow.
Oh, okay. So disclaimer there. He's a customer. Okay.
Excuse me, I've been driving the X70 for 2 months.
Oh,
Okay.
so quite a few
but
customers.
the thing is that I am open to any idea of having industries coming to Malaysia. The catchphrase is pay people more.
As we discussed in the previous
Yes.
episode.
Okay. Is the third car necessary? Not necessary, but it could be one of the components. Okay. It should not be a mega project.
What do you mean by that?
It should not come from the taxpayers.
Okay.
So not a government
It
initiative.
should not be. The government the only way that the taxpayers pay for it is with incentives that is given to the car company. So the incentive would be anyway taxes that we shouldn't get anyway.
Yeah.
It's new. So give them 10, 15 years incentives, whatever. All right? But at no instances should a third car be a taxpayer's project.
Okay, so not funded by the taxpayer.
Nope.
So Terence is supportive of this. Saiwan, can I conclude
I'm
that you are
supportive
supportive of
provided ...
Okay, so caveats there.
There are caveats.
Okay.
Parker?
My concern is, we are very informed people. We can accept your argument, Saiwan's argument, but the people on the ground are not so receptive to this idea. I don't know why. They're thinking that it's an idea which is not needed now. Probably they think the priority is cost of living, the everyday bread and butter issue.
Right.
So is the government not communicating well, or can they ever communicate to our people on the benefits of this project?
Is it because of
Secondly,
Proton's troubles?
I'm not sure what Mahathir has in mind besides what you said, because he's a man who when he decides, when he sees the objective, he just pushes, walks along, he disregards the rumblings.
What is called
It worked. Bulldoze another way. But it worked when he was in full power. But right now, he's not having that kind of power he enjoyed. So the rumblings can affect the performance of the government.
This one comes back to what Melissa said earlier, that there's a total lack of communication. He shouldn't have announced there will be a third national car without explanation. And then he leaves it to very inept ministers to try to explain it. Okay, because I'm in the business, I bothered to find out. I know that it will not be funded by taxpayers. The car company has come in and made a proposal on how they plan to do it. They're even going to buy the land where the manufacturing plant will be. There are several state governments which are lobbying very heavily for it. But the whole point is that they did not go and communicate to the public, look, this is what we're going to do. It's not going to cost you a cent. It will help to give your children job and better paid salary, which they won't say, and therefore help the cost of living. They don't seem to be able to put it all together in one sentence.
in a proper message, right?
Yeah, I think so. We have had that experience with Proton and Perodua, and while I agree that yes, it's job creation, but let's consider the fact that we've also had Mahathir introduce the MSc, which on its on the surface definitely very forward thinking. But you look at the time it has taken for that whole MSc itself to deliver in terms of the kind of digital the industry itself. I think that we need to take that into account and also see whether this actually is indeed going to be beneficial as far as R&D is concerned. Are we actually creating a knowledge economy also, in addition to just coming up with another brand of car, which I know that's not the plan. I know that there is this talk about also coming up with sustainable green cars and things like that. But I think let's separate that. You want to invest in an R&D, high tech for the sake of knowledge. I think it's great. But let's not also joke ourselves and say that okay, it's going to create all the jobs, because we know the problems from the previous industries. Again, who gets the contracts? The subcontracting, the supply chain has always been corrupted in that sense. I think to have that repeat would put us back in what we've been trying to
So maybe that's...
I think that's a very intellectual way to look at it. I think the Joe public is more bothered about how much the national cars are costing the other cars. Okay, the fact that a lot of the Myvis and now even the X70, sorry, great plug, will be wonderful vehicles. But I think the faith in the national car is actually very low.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to what Bakran was saying about this backlash. You asked why is there backlash, and I think it's the legacy issues, the fear.
Right.
I mean, there is a certain trust deficit because of the things that we have seen previously, and the worry that it could happen again as Gaya.
Yeah.
So the national car is one of the mega projects that the Pakatan Harapan government has announced. But if we were to go into, say, the mega infrastructure projects, now that is of a bigger scale. The idea was that to either streamline these projects in terms of costs, but maintain the multiplier effect that the infrastructure projects would bring. So let's take a look at the HSR, the KL Singapore High Speed Rail. We paid 45 million ringgit for the KL Singapore HSR suspension, and the idea was to make sure that we don't overspend. So it was because we couldn't manage it in terms of our finances, right? Did you think that was the right move for the government? Who wants to take this? Saiwan, you always have something to say.
The HSR is under suspension because I think that until today, the alignment is still not firm. And every state government between Kuala Lumpur and Singapore is lobbying very hard, and that was the easiest project to suspend because there was no firm commitment on any party. They were not taking away compensation or whatever. It hasn't moved.
Nothing has moved.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I think that many of the cabinet ministers and senior party leaders were very shocked with the amiable posturing by Singapore. You want to suspend? Oh, it's okay. They didn't make a big issue out of it, which is what usually Singapore does. Okay, if you see the Singapore minister's explanation of the HSR in Parliament, in Singapore Parliament, they were quite factual about it. They did not do any Malaysians being indecisive, political instability, which is what you usually hear about Singapore politicians say about Malaysia. It was a very factual thing. It will cost so much money. It is this one. We have agreed to postpone it for X number of
2 years. Yeah.
So it was left like that. And HSR, rightly or wrongly, I don't think was a necessary
project.
Cancellation.
Okay, why?
Because look, Singapore now operates out of 2 airports, Seletar Airport and the Changi Airport. We have permanently made use of Subang for the Klang Valley, Subang, and Malaysia has always sold Senai as the third, or used to be the second airport of Singapore.
Right.
So
you're saying it's redundant. There's no real
the
need
amount
for
of
it.
money that you need,
Okay.
the inconvenience.
Okay.
So the only thing it was meant to be was like it takes you 2 hours. You can have breakfast in KL and then have lunch
Is it
in
90
Singapore.
minutes to this?
Yeah.
90
Yeah.
minutes, yeah.
What is the priority?
Right.
What was the multiplier effect? I don't know. So that the hawker shops in Singapore and KL enjoy more business. I mean,
I thought
I
it
don't
was
see it.
it was all the points
Yeah,
along the
well,
way.
basically, it's going to benefit Singapore more than Malaysia actually.
Okay.
Although it runs more in Malaysia,
Mm.
what's going to happen to the man who loses his land, his farm? Is the township going to benefit? They're not going to grow as big
Do
as
you know
what
the
these guys
hoteliers
are
were
going to
very
benefit.
unhappy because it meant now that Singaporeans could actually come in for a day's meeting and have a meeting late till the evening and still be home for supper. If the HR, they didn't have to stay a night in KL.
But wouldn't that be good for business and migration of people? You know, human mobility.
Human mobility is not a multiplier effect.
Right.
I don't
And
think
the
they
cost,
could
the
just-
cost is quite huge apparently. The
For-
ticket
yeah.
will
To
cost
justify the
Correct. Yeah,
ridership.
it is expensive. Okay, so HSR that being suspended for 2 years, that was perhaps not going. No one's going to be crying over that as much. Perhaps
few
more.
Except the Singapore media.
Singaporean might be.
They're
Singaporeans might
on a
be.
massive attack on.
Let's
on-
contrast
Yeah.
that with ECRL. I mean, the idea for ECRL to the multiplier effect for ECRL is within the country, right? Especially with the East Coast. Do you?
You see, the question was, were we at the equal footing when dealing with China over the ECRL? While they were dealing with us on ECRL, they were also talking to Thailand about building the Kral Canal, which would eventually make Peninsula Malaysia an island. You see, and make the ports of Kuantan, for instance,
And kill Singapore.
redundant. Yeah, kill Singapore. Exactly. So they were double dealing.
Right.
So where exactly were we going to stand in terms of the success of the ECRL? Was it going to be a success at all? Whose interest was being prioritized, ours or China's? Of course, China's coming there to prioritize their interest, and we were not there on an equal footing to begin with. Is it necessary? I don't think so.
The ECRL?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I-
Are we
I-
saying
I
that
don't
from
think
a
it's-
position of
I-
comfort in the
it's-
Klang Valley?
Well, you already have existing rail connection anyway. Okay, you know what you need to look at is how it's going to benefit the ports, and are we going to end up cannibalizing? Are the ports going to end up cannibalizing each other?
Right.
You see,
Actually, why didn't you look at double tracking?
correct.
The KTM double tracking.
In fact, I was at the Malaysian Association of Rail Industry Corporation 2 weeks ago, which was opened by Tun Mahathir, and he said the same thing. He said, why are we talking about ECRL? Why are we talking about HSR? The question was posed on HSR actually, and then we should be focused on improving our internal rail networks, on connecting our own people within the peninsula first. We already have embarked on a double tracking project. Why don't we focus on that? Focus on connecting Johor to Tumpat.
Right.
You know,
That should have been double track all the way.
that's right.
You know, the thing about mega projects is that because they're so large scale, they require, a substantial chunk of government coffers. But it also is an outward show of government spending and confidence of foreign investors, confidence to the people. So they see the government spending large amounts of money building huge infrastructure projects. They think the economy is doing well. So with the new Pakatan Harapan government, can we still call them new
No.
after a year? With the Pakatan Harapan government, scaling down has also meant that confidence has taken an impact.
Yes.
Well, I think that the move was right to review all of these projects because I do think that we definitely went into all of this without really sufficient. I also think sustainability and impact studies because really who are the communities or who are the people or who are the if we talk about supply chain as well, who really benefits
Yeah,
from
yeah.
all of this? Considering also that we have a pretty decent land transport for some of the transfer. And of course, if we're talking about businesses, then air transport is really big, it is really the preferred one for now. So I think reviewing it is
Was a
definitely
good
the
move.
right move. I don't think that it shows that we have a weakness in terms of the confidence level. I think it shows to some extent also a more authoritative approach. In terms of
The
also
operative word being authoritative.
I'm just short of saying authoritarian, not authoritarian. But I think to say that, because it also, in this case, as Terence pointed out, it's beyond just infrastructure, but it's also relationship with China, right? I think that element also comes into play very strongly. And I think for us to be another sort of base where large infrastructure is being put or invested on, I think in fact we need to actually buckle that trend, because I don't think this is what Malaysia really needs. I think there's so many other ways in which we can generate investor confidence. I think it's stronger economic options rather than constantly taking the infrastructure path.
Okay.
But looking at the renegotiation and the success of it, yeah, I mean, there are criticisms on the success, but it was successfully renegotiated. We got back money.
Yeah,
that
I would say it's a
that
success.
itself gives a positive image of the government.
Wasn't it
They're being
wasn't it-
economically
It's just a
sensitive.
PR exercise, isn't it?
What was
As
I
diplomacy is, in
Yeah,
that
it's
sense,
a-
right?
it's
In
a-
a
it's a
way,
diplomatic PR.
Yeah.
No, but what I'm saying is that we should actually, if the government really wanted to review the ECRL, go back to the start. Why was the ECRL even thought about?
in the first place.
Am I wrong to say it was Barisan Nasional's attempt to capture Kelantan?
Could be
That's
politically.
a bit long
Okay.
term, I think.
No, but that project is that long.
Mm.
That project was that long. Look, the ECRL is not going to be completed until 2023 or 2025, either one. So the Barisan Nasional thought it would be here for another 90 years, and they want to capture Kelantan. Will it be an apt project to have?
But don't forget, even during Tun Mahathir's first tenure as Prime Minister, there were already talks for a rail link to Kunming, to
Right.
China,
Yes.
and going on.
That
the
was the
radio.
ASEAN night.
Correct?
Yes.
Yes. And I think the Tun Mahathir and the government is behaving like a government now when they're talking about scaling down ECRL, because the first thing they did 1 year ago was say we're going to cancel everything, we're going
Right.
to review everything.
That's right.
And then they just spooked investors because they're still coming with the opposition mindset. And also when we talk about these mega projects, whether it's ECRL, whether it's MRT or LRT or whatever, the perception is that these are inflated projects which are meant to siphon out political funding.
Which
funds
is
for
what
political
what
funding.
Gayatri mentioned
Very
earlier.
politely.
Right.
did.
Very politely.
about how opaque the contracts are
Contracts
given,
are, yeah,
whether
yeah.
whether the numbers have been inflated. So the idea was to put everything on the table, review it, and get the best deal possible for Malaysia.
Actually, if you look at all the projects that they relooked, except for the MRT3, which has not been cancelled, and HSR, which is suspended.
Yes.
Actually, the Pakatan Harapan government have not cancelled any mega projects.
And the latest is Bandar Malaysia.
But to be fair, I did the same mistake. I thought it was something that the Barisan government was continuing until I was reminded, no, the Barisan government actually cancelled in 2017.
2017.
And now that big piece of land there is being made use of to build affordable housing.
Having said that, the ECRL, sorry, is actually a BOT project, right? Build, operate, and transfer. It's huge, and eventually we can only see returns in probably a decade or more, in 2 decades, and there'll come a time we won't be able to even maintain it, and we don't want to end up like Sri Lanka giving away the ports to China.
Of course.
So this is another danger that exists. We do not know who is going to govern Malaysia at that time.
Well, that brings me to my next point, which is these often these mega projects are not just Malaysia's own projects, right? They are tie-ups with other
Tie-ups with other
countries. Now, I mean,
countries.
HSR with Singapore, ECRL, China's very involved with that. what does it mean for Malaysia when we review these big projects? What does it mean for our relationship with countries like China? Saiwan, I know you went to that trip
Yep.
with the Prime Minister in the
Okay.
early days of the administration
Okay, basically it's
to
this.
China, right?
I think Mahathir has managed to spook the Chinese leadership. The first thing he did was be very nice to Japan. The Chinese government has almost an inherent fear of anyone getting close to Japan. And Mahathir did it very well. The first country that Mahathir visited 5 days after he became a prime minister was Japan.
Japan.
Okay? He made sure that the Chinese knew where he was going. And if Mahathir did not adopt that kind of stand, I don't think Tun Daim Zainuddin would have that much an easy way of negotiating. Okay? I think he has put the Malaysian-China relationship back on track. China is 1.7 billion people. It is still a huge market for Malaysia. Whatever you say, okay, we do export extensively to China, so we need them, okay, but we should need them on equal terms and or at least towards favorable to us. We should not be subservient to China.
But Japan also did show interest in one of the two rail projects.
HSR.
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 Until today, the HSR project has not been awarded.
Right.
The French were here, the Japanese were here, the Koreans were here, the Chinese are permanently here.
Okay, so in looking at the Pakatan Harapan government's economic agenda, do you think that we have control of the narrative and the agenda, or are we still influenced by other countries like China, for instance?
Well, I think it's very difficult to sort of totally insulate oneself from that influence, and I think maybe that's not what even we need to aspire for, because I think there is a lot more benefit in terms of having that engagement and open engagement, because it allows for discussion for a lot of other issues. But I do agree that I think that turning it and saying, look, we have to negotiate on also our terms is really, really important, because if you look at the region, I mean, we are not the only ones where this kind of infrastructure is happening. It's happening in Myanmar, it's happening in Cambodia. In some places, they are saying, no, we don't want the kind of dam projects that you're investing in, because it's huge. It changes the entire landscape and the people and the politics.
Right.
And the politics is so important because China is actually involved in many in-country discussions about political issues. So I think that it doesn't help to keep them at bay, because they are part and parcel of the international system and international negotiations. But it's how we discuss with them that's really important.
What I want to stress is that is one of Malaysia's biggest strength, that everyone wants to talk to us because of our geographical location. We should keep the conversation like that. It should not be exclusive and should not be monopolized by one other country.
Do you guys remember, I think not a year and a half ago, I mean, there was such anxiety and angst about the Chinese coming up and buying everything, or that we were selling our sovereignty to China. I mean, have we completely flipped? Have we turned
No, I think in fact that's a very real concern. And that's not just here, again, it's global. There is a real concern about losing your sovereignty, whatever sovereignty means to each and every person. But I think, in a way, yes, maybe I think this negotiation, for example, is saying, okay, hang on,
We've managed to pull the head.
pull a little bit,
Okay,
yeah.
a little bit.
Because,
of handbrake.
I think the day after the cabinet was announced, I think the Chinese journalists kept asking the Mahathir about that, what about the ECR, what about, there is a concern there, but also for us, I think to say, we need to change slightly the rules of
Engagement.
Engagement. Okay, all right. Parker, do you have anything to add?
Probably as long as the land ECRL is, I think, not being sold. The land is not being sold, right? It's just money in, and all the projects are not selling land. I think as long as we don't sell our land.
No. The new deal is I think 17 industrial estates or 27 industrial estates.
It's better than the old
Take it
deal
out.
where the entire right of way,
Yeah.
that flanking your rail line
Right.
belongs to China.
Yeah.
You can't even open a goreng pisang stall there without Chinese
so
approval.
there is a
That's
there is-
That is
that's
still-
until
that is-
they hand
yeah.
over, right? I mean,
no, it's
No,
theirs.
no, it's theirs.
no, it's
theirs.
BOT. You
No,
have to
no,
hand
no,
over,
no,
right?
it's
No,
theirs.
it's theirs.
Oh,
The industrial estate belongs to them.
Yeah.
Okay, there is a very real danger of what happened in Nigeria, Sri
Sri
Lanka,
Lanka.
Sri Lanka, yeah.
Maldives.
Maldives, even,
You know,
yeah.
there's a huge danger. That is why we should take advantage and engage with as many countries as possible. I don't want to sound as though I'm lobbying for Japan, but let them
Just the
have,
lobby away.
East policy.
You have the samurai bonds with them.
Let them have the HSR. We're going to have a lot of fun in this country.
Okay, well, I mean, I think that's interesting because we're trying to kind of engage with all these different countries and have them participate in our kind of economic development as well. But whether or not we've got the right terms, right? Whether Malaysia's terms are favorable to us, who do we have to credit for that? I mean, Tun Daim Zainuddin has been mentioned as one of the people who have helped look at this in the Ministry of Economic Affairs, also looked at the ECRL projects. So has the government actually been done a good job in making sure, communicating that
Until the
Malaysians understand?
CP report is un-OSA,
Yes.
we will never know.
Until they declassify it, you'll never know.
Right, and we're all in favour of it being declassified?
Absolutely.
Yes,
Of course,
please.
of course.
Absolutely.
That's the Pakatan promise.
Yeah.
Openness,
Yeah, the only sections where, for example, it can lead to investigation can be redacted,
Can be
but
redacted.
even then you can
No, they
demand.
should. They
But
should
you know,
just-
there are policy recommendations. Why shouldn't the public be privy to that information to discuss if indeed this is what the
even if they
the
found
direction should be?
criminal acts,
It's only
what
a
is-
report. It's not
why,
investigation. Yeah.
what's wrong?
But anyway, why don't you give credit to Daim Zainuddin? Because I think he was the man behind this whole plan.
Mhm.
Yeah, Mahathir gave him that kind of authority. So he I think single-handedly came up with this renegotiation plan. That's what I
Scary
get.
though, right? When you're single-handedly
Scary.
able to do something.
Scary, but under the
Until-
circumstances,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
huge
No, no.
problem we were
Yeah.
facing,
Bucket of
you
shit.
needed someone to have a team to look at things. So the Council of Eminent Persons
No,
came in.
until the report is published, I reserve my comment on Tun Daim.
Until.
Until.
So not if.
If it doesn't come out, I think it'll be one of the reasons why they lose G15.
I mean, we
Yeah.
just to answer your question, we could be, we can only be speculative, but I don't think anybody could have pulled it off, if not for Mahathir, if not for the Council of Eminent Persons, which also includes Robert Kwok,
Mm-hmm.
if you remember, he's
Yes,
also part of
that's
it,
right.
and his job there is actually to help deal with China.
Right.
So we don't know what his involvement was, but I'm quite certain that he's there for that particular purpose.
Mm.
So we didn't come out of ECRL unscathed,
Mm.
but we're definitely kept our head way above water. I don't think anybody else would have pulled it off, not the previous government.
Well, we're going to be talking about the man himself, Tun Dr. Mahathir, and his, I guess, role in leading this last year for Pakatan Harapan. That's coming up in the next episode of Front Page as we assess the Pakatan Harapan report card right here on Lite.